From FlipFlopi, we have Leonard.
Hello, I'm Leonard. I'm a designer. I'm the engineer of the FlipFlopi project, and this is my personal collection of throwaway single-use plastics. And I do admit, I collect those things. This was some days ago with the big flood, Nairobi River. This is supposed to be a video, but it didn't work with the PDF and stuff. But you see, there's a lot of bottles, and they are just there, and they're coming, and they keep on coming, and they keep on coming. So I showed this to my daughter, and she said, "Who lost all these bottles?" And then I had to admit, they're actually not lost. They are designed that way. They're designed as throwaway things. They're single-use plastics, packaged by throwaway. But you can actually make nice things out of it. That's what she did. A little bit of afternoon playing, and she made some flowers. So plastic has value. And we just need to recognize that value in those throwaway plastic. And if we go to the coast, we see the same thing. There's plastic washed ashore every day. And we, from the FlipFlopi, we actually realized there's value in this. And we wanted to do something about it. We don't only just see the problem, but we see there is an opportunity. So we wanted to build a boat, but not just a little boat. We are wanting to build a big boat. So we got together and thinking, get our design and engineering heads together, say like, what can we do? How can we do it? And we came up to build a boat, a 60-foot sailing boat. This is our prototype. And we do this together with the local boat builders. They have generations of knowledge on how to make boats. But we discovered that they actually have a problem, because those trees that they have been using to make these parts are actually not as abundant as they used to be. So when we actually turn that plastic that we find on the beach, that we find on the dump sites, when you turn that into plastic lumber, which you see on the left, then we can give them the material that they need to work with to actually do their jobs, to create income for themselves and their families. And we see that we can actually build a boat in the traditional way that those people have been doing for generations, with the tools that they have been brought forth from generations of working with these materials. And the plastic works in a very similar way as the wood does. But naturally, we got some design issues here because the plastic is not as strong as, it's more flexible. So we got a lot of experimenting to do. We needed to see which parts actually work, which production methods can work to bring up a material that is working for the people in the way that they're used to. So you see that we turn these little trash items into big parts, but they are a little bit different in their properties as they're used to. And so we have been experimenting with new types of presses, with new types of processing, with new fillers, to see that we can get a material which actually has the same properties or similar properties as the wood that they are used to building the boats from. So why is the project called FlipFlopi? It's FlipFlopi because 30% of the waste that we found on the beach is actually flip-flops. 3 billion people in the world, that's almost half of the population on the world, is wearing flip-flops on a daily basis. And naturally, that's what we find a lot on the beach. But we found a way to actually use those as well. With some local artisans, we found a way to turn these into mats, into structure that can be fixed to the surface of the boat, which you'll see in the next slide. And it serves several purposes. Actually, it's quite nice. It's inspirational, it's cheerful, but it also makes the boat waterproof so that the water doesn't come in. And, well, that's a pretty important thing with a boat. Then, when we have the big boat built, we want to sail it down the coast up to Cape Town. and stop in every little community to talk about the opportunities that this waste actually gives us. That the waste comes to us, but we can turn it into something else. We can turn it into a boat. But if we can turn it into a boat, we can also turn it into a table or in a bench or anything that you would want, basically. And we can show those people how this is done. And there's lots of tools that we will take on the way to not only tell them and give them flyers, but really show them how it's to be done. So you may be asking, what can I do? Well, I think if you start to rethink, if you start to look at plastic of value, the single-use bottles that you have, you can use them for something else. You can reuse them, but you can also turn them into something else. And you designers, you have a creativity and the right tools to actually do this, to actually turn this waste into something treasureful. So I invite you to join us, join the plastic revolution, share your ideas online, get it out, because we need all the power of all our generation to actually solve this problem. So this is the FlipFlopi expedition, and thank you for being here.
Up next, we have Esther Kute from Bata.
Hello, welcome to Nairobi for those who are coming out of Kenya. I'm Esther Kute. I'm the product development manager for Bata. Basically, what that means is I'm in charge of the designing department, and I'm the first woman for this. I'm the first Kenyan, and I'm also the youngest. Yeah. So basically what this means is, okay, so I'm not going to follow the slide. You could go through it. I gave so many slides. But basically what this means is I understand the challenges that designers in Kenya go through because I studied in Kenya and I understand some of the problems. And we thought, how do we get in touch with the students, the universities, and bring them into the industry and create something that is unique, something that is exciting. At the same time, our customer base is changing, yes? So how do we go about this? So we approached the universities, University of Nairobi and Technical University of Kenya, and they gave us a list of students that we could work with. These were product, fashion, and textile designers. And out of the list, it was about 40 students. We selected about 4 designers, and there's Cynthia Alela, Ian Abraham, Stephen Tairu, and Moraja Nyabame. And the 4 designers were either doing fashion or product design. They had to be undergraduate students or recent graduates from the universities. So this is Cynthia. She actually is the one who won the competition because what we did was we did a designers competition called Bata Designers Apprentice. Okay, so she's a graduate. Ian is from the Technical University of Kenya. He's a final year student. There's Moranya Bame. Mora is from the University of Nairobi. She's a fashion design student. 4th year, she actually just did her examinations. And we had Stephen Thairu from the University of Nairobi, 4th year student also. So he also just did his examinations. Yeah, so what was the point of doing this? As I said, it is to help the designers come to the industry and understand what does it take for me to actually become a creative designer or a product designer or a fashion designer in Kenya, and how do I translate my products into actual shoes. So this was the official launch sometime last year in September. We did a contract with the designers and we gave them a brief. Using the equipment existing in Bata, they need to come up with a collection that will be their future. So using iconic brands like Safari, for those who know Bata, we have Safari Ngoma, these kind of things. How do they create an iconic brand from that? We decided as they are doing the competition, they need to learn some things that relate to fashion industry. So for example, this was a sale challenge, and the idea was they work with a band called The Band. It's one of those upcoming music bands in Kenya, and they were supposed to sell shoes to them. And what we were doing is, as a marketing campaign, We also post videos and photos of this on social media just to get people to understand what Bata is all about. So after the Leban challenge, oh wow, I'm blinded. So what we were also doing is we were inviting the guys who were coming in. We were calling them influencers. They come to the Bata factory in Limuru. It's a huge factory. We produce up to 30 million pairs of shoes a year. And they came and they just had a look to understand how does Bata then produce shoes. And also we were trying to be very fun because these are young people you're working with. You don't want them to get bored as they're doing the competition. So we had Sharon Mwangi. Sharon Mwangi is a fashion blogger. And the challenge for the designers was to customize an existing shoe. In Kenya, we have a shoe that is called Ngoma. And if you look over there, you can see the designers painted. This, we gave them a challenge for about 20 minutes. They sat down, they painted on the Ngoma. And Sharon decided which shoe she felt was the best. And of course, this was to add value. You take something that is very basic and you add value to it. Then the next challenge was a styling challenge. It was called the Swag with Tommy Taki. So Tommy Taki is another brand for Bata. And we got an influencer called Brian Bunde from Twitter. So he's very central in the, we are called KOT, Kenyans on Twitter. So he's very central in whatever that is happening within the Twitter sphere. And the idea was the designers each came up with a styling for him using the Tommy Taki shoes because those were his favorite shoes. And of course, he chose a winner out of this. And of course, there were different styles. You can see there was Chef Brian, there was Alejandro Brian. Yeah. And then the fourth challenge we had was the Biko Zulu Designers Masterclass. Jackson Biko is one of the most renowned writers in Kenya. And as a designer, you're supposed to be able to sell your product to people using words. And if you read Jackson Biko, he sells, he's very good with his words. And we thought we can help the designers to come up with ways to write about their shoes. And he had a critic with them, and they learned how to write about their projects. Oh yeah, so of course, as I said, anytime we did a challenge, it was posted on social media. Why was this important? Because a lot of people do not know Bata is a company that has factories in Kenya. So this was to open up the brand to the customer as we are giving an opportunity to the designers. So we had a finale event. This was held in January the 26th. And this is where we announced the winner of the competition. There was a cash award for the winner and for the first runner-up. They were getting a cash award. And we were also hoping to create a lot of exposure for these designers, not just to give them money, but also for them to meet people in the industry in Kenya. And Capital FM is one of the biggest media houses in Kenya, so they were covering the event, and they did the interviews, as you can see, with the designers. They also wrote articles. I think Nairobi Design was one of the guys who covered the event. So as I said, Cynthia Alela was the winner, so she walked away with a cash prize. Ian Bryan was the first runner-up. He also walked away with a cash prize. And then the coolest thing was we were going to produce the shoes that won the competition, and we were going to stock them in select Bata retail stores so that the designer has bragging rights. They can actually say, you're wearing shoes that I designed for Bata, okay? Yeah, but basically that was the idea. So you can see we were featured in quite a lot of media, and these are the big media houses in Kenya. Those Business Daily, Nation Daily. There's even a Daily Nation that did a whole full article on the 4 designers and the interviews about them. And the whole point was creating mentorship opportunities for the designers. Thank you so much.
As we move on to the fourth, and we are at the half point of the presentations with Katharina from Precious Plastic and Alicia.
My name is Katharina from Precious Plastic. I'm actually from Germany, one of the quite international Precious Plastic team. You might have heard of it. I hope you can understand everything I say. It's really loud. So you probably know about the big plastic issue. There's about 300 million tons produced a year, half of which goes into disposable products, and only less than 10% of this plastic waste is being recycled. And the industry doesn't seem to do a lot about it. And for people like us, it's not really easy to just start something. So Precious Plastic is trying to come up with solutions here, providing equipment and the knowledge and infrastructure for people to actually start. So that means they want to reduce the waste and the amount of the demand for new plastic by enabling people to actually do something about it. It all starts with these 4 machines, which are developed in a way that it's easy to build them with lower budget and basic tools and components which are available all over the world, basically, making it as accessible as possible for everyone all over the world. Then we have the techniques, which we try to work on, like what can you actually do with plastic? This is from crafting with very super basic tools up to making high precision products with really advanced technology. And with these recycling precious plastic machineries, you can create a big variety of products. You could basically do anything, but we also want to find out what products actually make sense to make out of the material. So this was the hardware of the project, like what you can make, and our platforms. With our platforms, we provide the infrastructure and knowledge of how to do it and how to get started and facilitate people to actually get started, which is, for the beginning, our website, where you can learn anything from about the plastic material, how to separate it, how to prepare it, to building machines and working with them, and everything we know and learn, we share online for free, so you can just download blueprints and everything what you need and get started. Then there is the forum, where a big community of 40,000 people exchange, help each other, ask questions, answer them, and trying to push the project further from every angle of the world. Finding a solution, finding the right solutions together. Just launched end of last year is our bazaar, an online marketplace where you can buy and sell anything from machine parts to shredded plastic to actually finished products, which makes it easier to source for the components and materials to start, but also makes people making a business out of it. And last but not least, our map, where you can put your pin as workspace, machine builder, or someone who wants to get started. And this enables people to connect to each other, to find each other, and start a business. So what you've just seen there on the map is over 200 workspaces already working with the precious plastic machines worldwide. And that's our community, which is a crucial part of the whole project, as they are expanding our team with people all over the world, designers, students, professors, environmentalists, engineers, and working on solutions and pushing the project further, improving everything from different backgrounds. So it's a very big variety of aspects which come in there. And with this community, they also come up with many outcomes depending on their different needs and contexts. So many outcomes, like coming from products which you use, or arts, or really constructing material, and also which is really inspiring for designers and artists, how to make cool structures and colors with it. So from the community, we are now coming to one showcase, which is our first precious plastic pilot. We try to learn from setting up workspaces in different areas where it's quite difficult and other conditions. We try to learn from that and improve our plans according to what we learn. And there I will hand over to Alicia from Precious Plastic in Kisii, Kenya.
Hello, I'm Alicia. So this is the current situation in Kisii County. After going around as the county youths, we realized that the plastic has so many at the dump site, and then so many youths do not have something to do. So we agreed maybe it's better to work with the United Nations Habitat, with the county government and the Kisii County youth to develop and to fabricate the machines, because the precious plastic machines are so cheap. So we were able as the youth to fabricate the machines. And we do the collection of the plastics from the streets, from the dump site. And then as a team, we do the cleaning of the plastic because they're very, very dirty, as you can all see. And then after the cleaning, we do the sorting into different types. We have several types of plastics, like with the PP, HDP, and several of them. And then we do the shredding, and then here we are making the products. So we have like 3 types of products from the 3 machines. We have like tiles, bowls, and the lampshades. They're very beautiful. So all of them are made from the small machines that we have. And then maybe, so from the products, you can see we have the on-progress products whereby they're not nicely done. So those were from the beginning. But then right now, at least we are able to say we can work with plastics. And then we have nicely done lampshades. We have tiles, which you can paint your wall with, have kids play with, use them as candle holders. And then apart from making the products, we educate the community whereby we're having students coming from primary schools, high schools, and the university students. So we're creating awareness to the community, and they're helping us to collect plastics as compared to the beginning where we didn't have the community knowing everyone is burning the plastics, throwing the streets. And then our future objectives, we want to see the whole community doing the source separation at the site itself. We don't want them to bring us the plastics that are not sorted and not clean. We want to see them cleaning, and then we have beautiful products. So that's a bowl. As you can see, we have a very clean environment free from plastic waste. Yeah, thank you very much.
Next up, we have James Mitchell from Orkidstudio.
Hi. So my name's James. I'm from Orkidstudio. We're a design and construction social enterprise based here in Nairobi. I founded it 10 years ago with a Ugandan girl that grew up here in Kenya, and today we call Kenya our home. The problem that we're trying to address here is that of girls and women's education through design and through the construction that we do. 50% or less than 50% of girls that graduate from primary school here don't go on to secondary school education. And that compounds a massive problem when you get to adulthood and beyond. And so there's a lot of solutions out there, particularly in agriculture, in the fashion industry, that help women build tangible, usable skills to build an income and take care of their families. But for us, we want to go that step further, and we want to disrupt an incredibly male-dominated sector, the construction industry, where there's less than 6% women working currently in Kenya, and about only 9 or 11% in the UK and the US. And so if you tell a young girl that she can work in agriculture, she'll believe you, because her mother's done it or she's seen other women do it. If you tell her she can build this incredible building, she won't. And that's the amazing impact that we're finding through building women's opportunities in that sector. And so the women that we're working with are typically between the ages of 18 and 35. They're often single mothers with high numbers of dependents, and they're all typically on $3 a day or less, some of them even unemployed. And this all started because of one incredible woman, Helen, that I met 5 years ago. We were building a children's home in Nakuru, and Helen came to the site and she said, "Can I volunteer to learn the skills that you're teaching these men?" And I said, "Well, actually, Helen, I'd rather pay you, but I want you to learn just as fast and I want you to work just as hard." And by the end of that week, we had 12 of her friends. And by the end of the project, they became the most highly prized members of our team. Those 13 women went on and built a house for Helen. We lent her the money. She repaid the value of that house within 4 years, and she's now 5 times their income, and all of her kids are in school. So a remarkable success there, but something that we wanted to build on and take further. The other issue that we're trying to address is within our own sector, the quality of design and construction in rural areas, but also cities like Nairobi. Cities where we're used to seeing scenes like this in Kibera, with incredibly poor quality infrastructure, but where there are buildings even at 10 stories tall or 6 stories collapsing, even in weather like this. And when this happened 2 years ago, the National Construction Authority reported that 58% of Nairobi's buildings were unfit for habitation. A shocking, but perhaps not surprising statistic. So the way that we're continuing to address this is by training more women in the construction industry. We're providing training in carpentry, metalwork, and bricklaying, and we're taking women through leadership courses and trying to build in a more of a rounded life skills approach so that we have critically thinking women looking at the world around them and the design issues they face. And through this training, women like Helen and the others that we've worked with, we find that their eagerness to learn means they're often become more highly skilled. We found them to be incredibly trustworthy and reliable and very hardworking and resilient. But this is not just about women. We still work with men. And so we try to employ 50% women on all of our sites and 50% men. And Judith sums up perfectly the impact this is having. She stood up in front of 250 of her peers, which is a remarkable feat for a young woman in a traditional community. And she said that the biggest impact this project has created is that all the men around her now looked at her differently. And so we're trying with our team of international and local Kenyan staff to develop a new architecture or an architectural identity that solves problems like mabati roofs in presentation areas to create better, more responsive architecture. And so the buildings that we're creating are built from sustainable materials, locally innovative architecture, which is taking the climate into account, creating spaces that you want to be in, that inspire you, that make you feel things. Buildings that are also safer, and buildings that can impact your health. So I'm going to talk quickly about one project that we've recently completed in Zambia. It's in the northwest region on the Congolese border, an incredibly remote area with very little access to healthcare. And we built a hospital there in the middle of nowhere. And one of the biggest challenges we faced was that the nearest simple hardware store was 12 hours away. And so we designed a building that had 84.4% of materials by volume sourced on-site or within a 10-kilometer radius, taking soil from the earth to create walls and roofs, taking timber from old demolished buildings to create windows and doors, and using sustainable forestry in the area to create formwork. But we also created a lot of jobs. Created 250 jobs, of which 50% or 52% in this case were female. And we were trying to create an architecture that was not just about innovating, but was also about taking local knowledge, local experiences, and local feedback to develop a design that everybody could be proud of, and which would set the tone for a different way of building in that area. And so this is the final hospital. It's a space where during the day the temperatures inside are cool, and during the night they're still warm. The building's been designed for the climate. And they create spaces that the patients and the staff actually want to be in, and that make them feel better day in, day out. And so here's a selection of other architects on this continent or in other tropical parts of the world that are creating incredible architecture just simply by looking around them, thinking and questioning, how can we do this differently? And so from that, I want to leave you today with the message that that's a challenge that we're hoping to rise to. It's a challenge that I know a lot of other designers here are rising to. But it's also about everybody else, not just the designers. It's the policymakers, it's the women that we employ on our sites, it's the men that are currently dominating the construction industry, it's everybody and everyone. Thank you very much.
I'd like to welcome the next speaker up, not only to the stage, but to Kenya, as they're opening, or have just opened, I think about a week ago, their new offices. Adam Reineck from IDEO.org.
Okay, hello everybody. Can you hear me? Good? All right, let's go. So I thought Fady was talking about mushrooms, so I'm going to talk about something a little out there and esoteric, but this is a really important design skill that's often overlooked, and it's how to embrace ambiguity in your work. This is really important because it gets you in that often confusing and frustrating state before you know what to design. The more time you spend there, the better off you'll be. Sorry, this looks really horrible, but I promise it looks better on my screen. So we are IDEO.org. We just came to Nairobi 2 weeks ago. We're really excited to be here. I lead our design team across San Francisco, New York, and here. And a lot of our work takes us to really complex and ambiguous types of challenges. Things like improving the financial literacy of people in the US, or improving the satisfaction and happiness of refugees in camps around the world. So we have a set of values that guide our work. And I think we feel that the most important of these is embrace ambiguity. Not because it's frustrating, because it leads to the most unexpected and magical outcomes that you wouldn't otherwise imagine. And we like to spend time in this space, but partly because it hurts, but it's something that takes training and a certain kind of mindset. So I'm going to try to break it down a little bit for you. It's not something you can read in a book. It's something that you kind of have to nurture in yourself. So one of our founders always talks about how we love to give away our methods and our secrets because we believe that we can always come up with something better and more innovative tomorrow. So the first rule of living in ambiguity is to trust the process. So moving from research, synthesis, ideation, prototyping, refinement, trust that that process will get you through whatever you don't know and out of this state of confusion to the answer. So we often take on really unexpected things to get there. Bucky Fuller, anybody know him? He said, when I'm working on a problem, I never think about beauty. But when I've finished, if the solution isn't beautiful, I know it's wrong. So the moral here is to stay present. It's really easy to get worried about how people perceive you, that your idea might be weird or uncomfortable. But the most important thing in design is to stay true to yourself, stick to what you're doing, and work through it. There was a really cool animation there. Another really important principle here is creative confidence. So creatives, I think we all doubt ourselves more than any other field, possibly. And the more you can break that down and believe in your instincts and your abilities, the better off you'll be. Because doubting yourself leads to mediocre work. So number 3 is build confidence in yourself. Find ways to build gratification into your work. And remember that skills get you started, but confidence takes you to the finish line. Susan Sontag said that a writer is somebody that pays attention to the world. And that's all you are, and that's true for every creative discipline. So the moral here is if you feel stuck, if you don't know what you should be working on, is to get out of your seat, open your eyes, and listen really carefully to what's going on around you. We always try to get people to listen before they speak, which isn't usually the way the world works. So I don't know if you know Viktor Frankl, but he talked about this important space between what you perceive in the world and what you actually do about it. He said that space is where you find your growth and your freedom. I think that is what intuition is as well. And we really value bringing your experience and your intuition and your gut and balancing that with everything you experience and see out there. also often overlooked in the design field. This is the esoteric stuff. And Emerson said that curiosity is lying in wait for every secret. So one of the most easy things to forget as a designer is your curiosity. We have the tendency to be working on something and to drive it home, stay at your computer. But sometimes the best thing to do is to get out, start asking questions, figure out how the world works, ask why more often. This is what will break you out of the zone you're in into somewhere completely new. That's my friend. And lastly, so I think all designers know that good constraints lead to good design. If you don't have constraints, you'll be floating and kind of exploring and spinning. So to sum all of this up, bring your intuition, your curiosity, and your confidence together. Learn what constraints apply to you and then break them apart, bend them. And that's how you'll bring your work to levels that you haven't taken them before. That's where you find the magic. So this is a little bit out there, but it's something we think is really important, so I wanted to share it with you. I'll leave you with these principles. I guarantee if you try to practice them in your work, especially if you have something really tough you're working on, you'll end up in a kind of slightly different place, somewhere you might never have imagined. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And as I call the last speaker of the night, please stay a bit longer, get your opportunity to interact with the many designers you've met, talk to us, and think about what you're gonna come and see tomorrow. The festival is gonna be running all week at the Kenya Cultural Center, and we'll come back to the Alchemist on Saturday, the 24th. Next up, we have from Better Shelter, all the way from Sweden, Märta Terne. Here, welcome.
Hi, I hope that you can hear me. My name is Märta, and I'm here from Better Shelter. We're a Swedish social enterprise, and we've been developing refugee shelters for refugee camps all over the world for the last 10 years, together with IKEA Foundation and UNHCR. And these types of shelters are used when there are no local materials available, wood or bamboo or whatever you have. So just as tents, they're sent in after an emergency when a lot of people need somewhere to stay for the night, basically, and probably for many years to come. And these shelters are used as accommodation all over the world, and they look very differently depending on where they're used. They have to be scalable for different contexts, for different family situations, and they also have to fulfill very contradictory expectations. They have to be temporary but feel permanent. They have to be last a lot longer than tents, for example. And there are a lot of protected refugee situations in the world now. Kakuma and Dadaab, for example, in Kenya have been around since the 90s. So people need to live in these very temporary shelters for 10, 20, 30 years, for example. So we started working on these 10 years ago in Sweden, where we did a lot of prototyping and we tested many different solutions off-site, so not in refugee camps, so far away from where they would actually be used. And then after about 5 years, we started testing them in the field. And this is when we noticed that everything that we had presumed we would have to change because people ended up using the shelters in completely different ways. For example, people turned the windows upside down so that you would get an airflow further down where the children slept. So after prototyping in the field, we came back to the drawing board and kept working on them for another 3 years, basically. And something that you as a designer have to think about is to always relate to the user at the same time as you have to be very humble to the fact that you know very little about their situation. These children, for example, 5 siblings who came to a camp without their parents, so they're completely on their own. But they share some of the basic needs with us here, and those are the ones that we have to focus on as designers. This woman lives in Iraq, and she has her own business in her camp where she makes dresses because her husband died, so she has to make the money herself to provide for her family. So what we've noticed is that people use the shelters in many, many different ways. This is a clinic in Nepal, which was set up by Doctors Without Borders, and all of a sudden they started asking new questions to us that we didn't know the answers to, because these were developed as accommodation and not as clinics. So this is also something that you have to be aware of all the time, that the brief will change. Today, there have been painted as murals as well, so they've become a permanent fixture in a lot of camps, and they've been used as classrooms, staff accommodation, registration centers. And something that we've also noticed is that innovation equals failure. And this is something that is discussed a lot, but it's very true. And we've failed so much during the last 10 years, but that's also what brings you further. But you really have to be aware of that. And you also have to be aware of the fact that your design is never ever finished. And you will always have to keep developing it, because the world is an ever-changing place, especially today, and especially when it comes to humanitarian aid. Another important thing is to collaborate. And this is a few colleagues of mine working on a factory floor in Sweden, testing the panels that we use for the walls and the roof. And failure becomes a lot easier also if you're not on your own. And we also collaborate very closely with our partners out in the field, with UNHCR, with Doctors Without Borders, because they are the experts. Where we come in with a design focus, they can actually tell us what it's actually like and which are the real needs. And something that we think about every day is that we have to relate and we have to act out of solidarity with these people at the same time as we have to stay humble to the fact that we cannot relate to their situation at all. But we have to keep working on making their life in this temporary permanence as good as we can until the day that they can return home, which is hopefully something that they will. And finally, I'd just like to say that for us in a very privileged situation, everyone in here, I think we all have to do something, and we will have the privilege and the responsibility to do something. Whether you do it during your office hours or after work, or whether you do it through design or in any other way. Yeah, that's me. I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you, Märta. I couldn't have finished it with any better words than what she said, echoing her sentiments that We all have a role to play. We all have a responsibility, whether it's during your working hours or after work. The music is gonna come back on. Please do interact. Feel free. We'll be around that table and this table from the Nairobi Design Week team. We have ideas seated over there. I can only see that far. So creatives, please identify yourselves so people can talk to you.